Beatlemania again. I'm starting a whole series on this. Now, was Beatlemania organic? That is something that I asked in a previous video. And what I mean by organic, did Beatlemania and the hysteria revolving around the Beatles, did it happen naturally? So in other words, did somebody just naturally make these recordings, put them out there, and people went crazy because they were so great? And today on YouTube, I got a video in my shorts feed about a young lady named Marcia Albert from Washington, D.C., who was 16 years old, or she was a teenager in high school. And she had seen a promotional video or a video of the Beatles singing the song I Want to Hold Your Hand. And this is in 1964. This is back before the Beatles even made it to America. So this is probably January of 64 or sooner. I don't remember. It doesn't say what day she saw or heard this video. And she's a young lady, and she sees a video of the Beatles singing I Want to Hold Your Hand, and they did a promotional video for the song, a music video, with them in their collarless gray suits and all that stuff. And she went berserk. She thought it was an amazing song. No one had ever heard of this band before. They had never gotten any radio play in America. So she called her local radio station in Washington, D.C., which was WWDC, and said, hey, I just heard this song by a group from England named the Beatles. They've got this great song called I Want to Hold Your Hand. Can you please play it for me on the radio? Well, the radio station allegedly didn't have this song, in their archives or in their repertoire. So the station manager wrote to the record company in the United Kingdom and had a copy of the 45 cents of the radio station, and the rest is history. So allegedly, this Marcia Albert, the 16-year-old girl, she's the girl who started Beatlemania. And guys, I don't know, you're a station manager of a radio station in Washington, D.C., and some teenage girl calls you up and says, please play this song, please me, please play this song. And you go, okay. And you take your time and your resources and your efforts, and you try to find out who this record is, and you call the record company, or you write them, send them a telegram, or whatever you did back then, set up smoke signals to get them to send you a copy of the record. And for some reason, this Marcia Albert woman is being coined as the person that started Beatlemania. The problem I have with Beatlemania is that it's so saccharine sweet. It's so perfect. It's so pristine. It's presented as being so innocent, just innocent boys and girls loving their music and sending them to the toppermost, poppermost. It's enough to make you want to vomit. It's so sweet, It's like if you ever take a spoonful of sugar and just put it in your mouth when you're a kid, and you're like, oh, why did I do that? That's terrible. And see, and I've gotten, and I know this about Beatles fans. I know this about all Beatles fans, including myself at one time. Beatles fans are some of the meanest people on the planet. And I know this because the comments I get since I started this series are brutal. But I don't care about them because when I was a Beatles fan and I was immersed in Beatlemania, I was hysterical about the Beatles. I was just completely beside myself. I was hypnotized by the Beatles. And I came out of it. I woke up. I don't know what happened, but one day I went, wait a minute, what? These songs are terrible. Oh my God. Maybe it has something to do with me writing songs and going to the recording studio and really finding out how things were really done in the recording studio. Maybe that was part of my awakening. I don't hate the Beatles. I'm not trying to say they're dark and they're evil. We'll get to that at another time. But I'm just saying that I don't think the Beatles the band themselves. I don't think it all happened organically. Now, sure, this young lady may have called into WWDC and requested the song, and that started Beatlemania. I doubt it. She probably did call into the station. But the likelihood that one young lady called into a radio station, it just happens to be Washington, D.C., where they would be having a concert within months of this phone call. They had a concert on Ed Sullivan, then I think they headed over to the Washington, D.C. Coliseum and had a concert there. The chances of one young lady sparking all this are so slim to none, because the videos they showed on TV really didn't have much of an effect. It hadn't been on TV, the song hadn't been released. I know for a fact that they had shown and previewed She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand when they first had them out there, and Americans were like, okay, what the hell is this? At the time we're listening to Bobby Vinton and Elvis and Frank Sinatra and crooners and people that could really sing, real musicians. And I know the initial reaction from our country was lukewarm at best. And I know for a fact, I've read books on this, and I know a lot of people try to contest me on here and say, like one guy tried to write to me and say, well, you don't know how many records were released in 1964. And I do know, I was pretty close. I was exactly right. There were only 2 albums in America. The third album, by the time they hit Ed Sullivan, by the time they hit Ed Sullivan, they had 2 albums released. They had Meet the Beatles, they had Meet the Beatles, and they had Introducing the Beatles. And then in the spring, several months after the Ed Sullivan Show, they released the Beatles' second album. So when they hit the scene in America, they had 4 singles and 2 albums. Look, I know all about this stuff, guys. I don't remember all of it, but I'm pretty much an expert on the popular version of the Beatles. So you can see, leave all the rude comments you want, but you've got to sit back and think logically about this. You've got a couple of guys in a band that some girl called and said, oh, I just love them, I love them, I love them, please play them, please play them, please play them. And the station manager, who's got all these other responsibilities in the world to do, either himself or ushered out one of his employees to go find out who this band was. I mean, the entire story of the Beatles is totally fantasy. It's total fantasy. I mean, the whole thing is so conjured up and concocted. It's amazing. And they presented it as it's just innocent and pure. And oh, gee willikers, a nice girl. There's a female construction worker. You don't see that very often. She's so innocent and pure. She got Beatlemania started. Gee willikers, beef. What time can we watch Mannix? Oh, I wish the Brady Bunch were on. Oh, I love it so much. Can I have Pop-Tarts with my cereal, Mom? It's like, what the hell? And we all seem to believe this stuff. See, I don't believe Beatlemania happened organically. I know for a fact that Brian Epstein, before the Ed Sullivan concert, went off into the line of girls standing outside, or the line of people, and gave them $50 and said, hey, go scream your asses off. There's a whole bunch of things that happened behind the scenes with the Beatles to get the hysteria up. And no, I don't think they were particularly good-looking men. I don't think they were. And when I remember seeing it as a kid, I'm like, why are these girls screaming over these guys? I mean, they're not your traditional kind of guy that a girl would scream over. Back then it was Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and I don't know who all the heartthrobs were back in '64, but it's right around that time. Cary Grant was on the way out, but he was still considered a smashingly good-looking, handsome man. And, these guys didn't fit the bill of the traditional, handsome, rock star Hollywood type. Why are these girls screaming over somebody like Ringo, whose nose was as big as my hand, you know? Oh, he's so gorgeous. Oh my God. You know, something doesn't add up. And it seems to have set the stage for a new type of star to be born, and a new fanaticism to be born. Fanaticism of being really hysterical over average to ugly guys. I mean, Mick Jagger, I kid you, he looks like a woman. He's his big fat lips, and he don't like this, you know. And he's like, what? And people go, oh my God, Mick Jagger's so gorgeous. Like, Mick Jagger? And it was just like, it seems like somehow, some way, they got into the psyche of American youth, and they told people, this is what's good looking, and this is what good music is, and people bought into it. They completely bought into it. And ever since then, you know, it killed the crooner, the era of the crooner. You know, there were people that still to this day listen to Sinatra and Elvis, but it pretty much did away with Elvis, and the Beatles and the British Invasion did away with Sinatra. And it set the stage for a whole new thing. You know, it's just like modern art. People will try to, you know, they'll paint some dog poop purple and paint it on orange and paste it to an orange canvas and tell you that that's art. And go, oh, look at this gorgeous modern art. Oh, isn't it brilliant? Genius. I'm sorry, I'm a pretty open-minded guy. And I like abstract art, but they somehow came into this culture, Western culture, and destroyed anybody's idea of what really good art is, including the Beatles and painting. Fine art especially has been decimated by this, especially the internet. The internet now is filled with pablum, just filled with garbage. People that are untrained, unskilled artists putting things out there, and likely they're making money at it. And I just don't believe Beatlemania was organic. I believe it was a highly engineered social engineering project by some force. I don't know who it was. There's others on here like Mike Williams. Mike, if you're watching, from Sage Quay. I still haven't read any of the books or anything about Tavistock yet, but I still think the Beatles were an engineered phenomenon. They were not organic. It wasn't natural. And I always try to preface these little rants that I have by saying Mike Williams is the preeminent authoritarian on this subject. I find it to be overwhelming, as probably they thought nobody would ever have the gumption to figure this all out. Nobody would ever have the determination and the will to figure this all out. And I think the one thing that makes me question the narrative is some of these songs are terrible. They're awful. And people just, oh my God, I love this song, and they'll do anything. And some of the reaction to this day, like this one guy on my channel, he just tore into me. Comment upon comment upon comment upon comment upon comment about his loyalty and his devotion to the Beatles and how I'm wrong about this and I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, let's say I'm completely wrong. Let's say I'm completely out of my mind, and the Beatles were organic and natural, and the storybook fable that they sold us is true, and fairy tales do come true. That kind of bullshit. A grown man is sitting in his living room somewhere on his phone or his laptop, and decided, because he's so incredibly passionate about four guys in a band that haven't been a group in almost 44 years, 54 years, 80, 90, 2000, 2010, 2020, 54 years, and two of them are dead, and none of them, if they were alive, would even care if he had got hit by a bus, wouldn't even bother sending flowers to his funeral. This guy will stand and fight to the death for these four guys who just write songs, play guitar and play drums, and that's it. That's all it takes for somebody to get vehement and filled with righteous indignation because someone attacked his band. This is a grown person. Nobody else but me thinks it's kind of odd that grown people will fight to the death over a rock group. A rock group saturated in booze and cigarettes and drugs. Nobody finds that weird. Oh, no, you can't put down my Beatles. And I think what happens is, and I know this from a personal perspective, I clung to the Beatles as a kid. This is all my own psychosomatic babble because I didn't have a father and I had no male role models in my life. And I didn't have any hope in my life. There was total chaos in my family. And why is there such a strong smell of gas in this car? What the hell is that? Is that it's an old van in front of me. It's a kidnapper's van in front of me. One of these old white, what is that? Is it a Ram? And it's a Ford. Damn. That thing is kicking out some fumes like it's 1980 all over again. And there's no way that as adults we should be acting this way about a band that hasn't been around in 50 years. Who am I to say that? I mean, think about it, guys. I mean, we're grown people. Most of us have families and mortgages and jobs and car payments, and really important things that we're trying to stay alive. Is it really worth getting into a fight about four guys from the United Kingdom that haven't been a musical group in 50 years? I mean, it's odd. It's peculiar, to say the least. It's peculiar. It really is odd. And if you'd have to do a psychological study on it, but you look at the traditional norms, most people are getting by, trying to get through their day. They get up, they eat their breakfast, they take their shower, they go to work, they struggle, they suffer at some cubicle or on an assembly line. The bell rings, they go home, they try to get the kids food, they try to play with them a little bit, put them to bed, and rinse and repeat. Do the hokey pokey. Most people aren't sitting around going, oh, Beatles, I love the Beatles, and this guy said the Beatles aren't organic. And don't you see how the insanity of it all is just so incredibly bizarre? Doesn't anybody see how we've all just, I'm not just talking about the Beatles, but I used to be really into a lot of other bands too. I was never into the personalities in the bands of the Stones, the Who, and the Kinks. But I liked their music a great deal. I could care less what Pete Townsend had to say, or Ray Davies, or any of those guys. Or Mick Jagger, or Keith Richards, who's been dead for like 40 years and he doesn't even know it. These guys promote drugs, they promote illicit sex, they promote all these things that today, look what's going on in our country. It's been completely decimated by drugs. We're decimated by rampant, in some places, venereal diseases. I don't know. Look at our society. Look what's happening to us. Look who's running for office now. But I'm not going to go down those roads. But I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to do studies on, I'm trying to find psychologists and doctors who have done studies on the psychosis of Beatlemania. And it seems to be a psychosis or neurosis, some type of crazy mental defect where people just lose their minds. And how do I know? I was part of it. I'm not a fanatic about it anymore. Because like I said, once you wake up to it, you go, oh, what the hell is this? What's everybody else screaming about? This is kind of weird. So I'm at the park. I'm gonna go for my morning jaunt. Leave me your comments and tell me what you think. I'm not trying to start a war with people, but I know what it's like. I know there's Beatles fans out there, and I used to get into fights with people all the time. I had friends that were ravenous, like Iron Maiden fans and Metallica and AC/DC, and they say, you don't know music, Beatles suck, AC/DC is cool. And we'd have one of those wonderful conversations. No, they're not. What has AC/DC done? You know, we were both, all of us in high school, and you'd have these really ridiculous arguments about a rock band. You'd almost get into fisticuffs with your friends over some stupid band that doesn't even care if you're dead or alive, just as long as you're giving them money to buy their records. And I just find it odd. Let's see who we got on here today. So, you know, and another thing, a lot of people on other channels will say, oh, my comments aren't being posted. Why aren't they being posted? Because we have the power to delete your comments or hide you from the channel or block you from the channel. So if you get belligerent with me in here, I'm just going to delete you. I'm going to block you from the channel. I don't care. Because like someone just said here, it's my channel. It is my channel. And if you're going to come on here and be an a-hole about what I'm talking about, and you can't think clearly, and you're still consumed to this day by Beatlemania, then I urge you to reassess your situation in your own life. Don't point the finger at me. Think about what you're spending all of your time, your energy, and your love on. 4 guys, 2 of them who are dead, and the 2 remaining ones wouldn't spit on you if you're laying dead in the sidewalk. They would have nothing to do with you. But they're quick to take your money to get repackaged shit that they've been repackaging for 50 years. The same songs, they remaster and repackage them. One Hand Clapping is out now. This ridiculous Wings package. Go ahead, but if you're gonna leave nasty messages, you're just not gonna be here anymore. All right, I'm gonna go for a walk. Take care.